I am calling the Administration Communications and Technology Committee to order. My name is Brian Travis. I'm the chair, and I am with Brian McGinnis and Sheila Vaccaro, my colleagues. The first order of business tonight are announcements. We do have one announcement. I believe that the announcement here is that we are going to make some amendments to the Transportation Advisory Committee membership requirements, but I believe we also agreed that we need the actual revision to the ordinance before we could do that, so we would reschedule this for January. Okay, perfect. Second order of business tonight is comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items that are not on this agenda. Yes, Mr. Cook.
I heard the Facebook didn't hear it. Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience tonight? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to reports. Do we not have the CISO report tonight? Okay. So we will move on to old business. First item of old business is to review the amendment to the Transportation Advisory Committee ordinance, which we just spoke of earlier, and schedule the public hearing for January 15th. So as discussed in the last ACT committee meeting, there were two additions that we wanted to include in terms of measurement and terms. The first of which was to have a majority of membership from the borough, residents from within the borough, from one of the wards. And the second one was to include a liaison with the Rail Restoration Committee. So both of those are included in this amended ordinance. Any comments or good?
No.
Okay.
No comment.
Anything from the audience? Seeing none, we will move on to 4B. Approve the November 2024 meeting minutes. Any comments, changes?
No comments.
Okay. 4C, discuss amendments to rules and procedures of Borough Council. There was an attachment. We've talked about this for a few months in a row now, and we've had a working draft, and I believe we have one that's pretty close to finish at this point. We'd like to go through it, at least through the track changes aspect of there were a few comments that I got from our Borough Vice President and President earlier today. So Sean, I don't know if you want to walk us through this.
Well, you did. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
You did say a track change version of it. So I did my best because when I got it, it wasn't in track change mode. It just had different kinds of font colors. So I did my best to continue that. So it's not officially like track changes where you can see every keystroke that's different, but I did my best to try and symbolize what's different in this draft than the one we had before. I went through, because this is how I proofread things. I go through, and if there's duplicative things, I take them completely out. There's no point in saying the same thing twice in two different places. And I'm also, although I talk too much in public meetings, I am a man of few words in written form. So I try, if there's extra words somewhere, I cut them out, and I just try and get right down to what we're trying to do with our agendas and our work session meetings and how things go from general consensus onto either the discussion or consent agenda, and what general consensus means, because that's hadn't been spelled out before. And general consensus is the absence of objections from membership of council. So I went through that, and I also, we go down a little bit further. We did make standard changes to all of these rules and procedure covering the way agendas can be modified at the meetings, so that we remain in compliance with Title 65, which was amended in 2021, most recently amended in 2021. There is one thing that is not on this agenda, and I don't know, excuse me, not on these rules and procedure that I had discussed with Council President a little bit, and that was, it's more of a financial transaction piece, and I'd like to get your opinion on this. Maybe it's something that goes to Finance Committee, or maybe it's something that we put in our purchasing policy. But the idea is, if there's a directive from any member of council or subset of council to me to employ consultant services or something outside of the normal day-to-day stuff. I don't need permission to spend money on a copy contract. I don't need permission from council to get a new paper towel holder in the kitchen, which we did this last week. But if we're going to spend more, the proposal was, if we're going to spend more than $5,000 of consultant fees researching a project that could come up, and it could be anything, it could be a flooding issue, could be a traffic control issue, that we bring it before all the membership of council so you can all sign off on it and say, hey, I think that's a good idea. It gets me out of the possibility of like, or the feedback where somebody might say, well, why are you doing something that one council person told you to do instead of doing something that the whole council would agree to? And I said, it gives me a little bit of cover, if you see what I'm trying to say. And it also by setting that $5,000 limit, it also means I'm not coming and asking for council's, follow through to do a transmission repair or everything you can think of in the budget. So that was an idea I'd like to workshop with you in the committee, if that's okay.
Yeah, it'd probably be best to do it in finance. Do you have a question, Sheila?
I just want to clarify, you're proposing that you bring that before the appropriate committee and not the full council?
Clearly, I would bring it to a committee that was most appropriate. So if it was, we did something like this last year where we looked at Price and Brandywine. So we spent not a lot of money, but we spent a fair amount of money on consultant RVE to look at solutions for that. The final bill was probably over 5,000, but not a lot north of that. And we did discuss it as a full council. We did have people in the room. But I would just want, my suggestion would be to formalize that and say, okay, if in that instance, that was a public safety issue. So maybe that should go to the Public Safety Committee, and then would be motion to direct the borough manager to engage Remington Vernick to research traffic safety solutions at this intersection. And then you can all look at it, see it at the same time, and say, that's a great idea, let's do that.
I guess my question would be, I mean, this would probably, I do think that we should discuss this in finance. But the threshold of $5,000 and just like the rationale behind why that was picked up below or above, I just.
Not super detailed in my
Yeah.
analysis, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll send that to finance for discussion then.
Okay.
And then we can add that if we need to this working document. I just, for me, it's rules and procedures, but thresholds and financial, it's money. So I don't know that it's exactly a perfect fit for this, or if it should go somewhere else.
I do. I'm just going to say, I think this is a really good fit. I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just trying to say that I feel, because I'm the thing that he's brought up about Brandywine and Price. Like that was something that was really important to my constituents. And I knew we were spending a lot of money, but it did kind of feel like, can I just say whatever I want and make you go do it? Like I shouldn't be able to do that. There should be some rules and regulations about it. I think setting the dollar amount in Finance Committee makes sense, but then it should come back and go on this document. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's good, strong opinion. Mr. McGinnis?
No, I'm in agreement, and I think the reason why it's because you had that issue on Brandywine and Price, but I have that issue in Darlington and Price, in which case we're reviewing. And again, so long as it is in line with Act 65, which I think it would be in line. I have no issue with that. The other issue is regarding amending agendas. We did talk about that before. And so that would have to be done, and again, in coordination with Act 65. And that would only be for monetary items, correct? And in which case there also is a threshold that needs to be met. I think with a resident bringing it up or some type of imminent issue, I believe. Okay.
So all that language I did see in this amended document. There were a couple questions about some of the strikeouts and whether or not we were removing something and it did not exist somewhere else in the document. So if we could start, maybe after all the red, I was okay with the red. Well, I'm sorry. Go up a little bit more. Right. So the first strikeout is except for items requiring urgent consideration, but that language is elsewhere in the document, but where?
Yeah, that is basically the borough manager can add things that are administratively routine to an agenda, and also things can be the phrase here is urgent consideration. There's emergent language in the amendment to Act Title 65 that talks about this. So it's repeated elsewhere that says if there's something that pops up after the agenda has been published and it's an emergent situation, there's a sinkhole down on Franklin because we had a bad rainstorm and we need to authorize, $80,000 of expenditure, we can do that.
Got it. Okay. And then if you just keep panning down, you can pass all this. I didn't have any questions about this. Did you guys have any questions about any of the addition in red? All right. So the president of council, now was this strikeout seemed like an important item that does this still exist somewhere? The president of the council may refer any item that has been added to the agenda to the committee for the next work session. Where does that exist now in this document?
I think that is in the admin code.
Okay, so it's
And
not
it
in
might,
this
and it
document.
might be elsewhere in the doc. I would have to look at that.
Okay, because I didn't see it in there. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't removing something important. All right, if you pan down. Okay, council committee meetings, I didn't, so all these other items also were in the administrative code?
Believe so, but I'll get written clarification and email to you on those,
Okay.
on those things.
All right, so we're probably not going to approve this tonight. We have a couple outstanding questions. There was the additional one on the committee agendas. And it was this, hold on, up a little bit. All right, new items that are not administered, it's number 5, right above D. There were a couple questions about this one, and I know that initially we had discussed when we were reorganizing how we set agendas, that we wanted to be able to introduce an item and then vote on it later. And I think we resolved that by splitting up new and old business. So I don't think we need this.
Tell me if I did it. Tell me if I did this right or not. I thought if something was new and you're seeing it for the first time in committee and it was going to involve resources and money and policy, that you didn't want to have it a new item be voted for and go right to the work session the week later because you wanted to avoid the fast track.
We did talk about
you wanted to be talked about in 2 consecutive months. Therefore, really, essentially, unless it's administratively routine, the only thing that's getting on the work session is old business.
Correct.
Stuff that you talked about the previous month.
Typically, but that doesn't, I don't know that we want to mandate a new business item from being voted on in the work or discussed in the work session and voted on in the voting session.
Okay.
I think most complicated issues, we should serve up as new business as discussion items initially. I think maybe that helps resolve it. I think naturally, a lot of times when we introduce something we just spent 2 years talking about short-term rentals.
What, I guess in this scenario, in what you're proposing, then it would just be incumbent on the committee and the membership of council just to not do that, just to not take something that's new
without discussing it first.
and very impactful, and then talking about it 6 days later in a work session meeting.
Yes, the
There
presumption would
needs
be
to
that
be an
we would
agreement
not do that.
amongst you all not to do that.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm going to question that. I felt like you, I felt like you brought that up, that because of the low-income housing proposal that got rushed through. And I feel like that committee would still have rushed that through if we didn't have something saying they couldn't. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong.
I think with that particular proposal, it did not go through a committee.
At all.
Correct. I believe that is the case. I believe that that was put on
Went through smart growth.
It was there.
through smart growth, but was it voted to move to the, and then it was put on consent for discussion?
The issue was that it wasn't clear that it was a discussion item because of how we organized the old agendas where everything was all in this. We would have motions, we would have discussion, we would have everything all in one list of things.
I mean, I'm in agreement. I think that items should flow through a committee before that they're put in any type of, work session. Again, I'm wrong. I had thought that that was put on a work session discussion and then moved that way, but I trust your judgment there. Yeah, I believe all items should flow through committee for debate and then moved through the full committee.
I'm still nervous.
So maybe we kick this around a little bit more.
Yeah, and like I'm not firmly nervous. I'm just like, ooh, something feels off here. And maybe it's the language that it's required for 2 weeks. Maybe that's not necessary, but that it's required we just need to say it has to go from new business to old business before it moves to work session. I don't know what the right language is, but I think the 2 weeks maybe sounds arbitrary, and maybe just spelling out the motion.
It would be 2 months because it would have to be introduced in one committee meeting and then brought up again in the second one. That's how this is written. The concern is that it will delay decision-making because if it has to be discussed first in a committee and then you follow what I'm saying?
Yes, and I said 2 weeks, I meant 2 months, but
2 months.
so I was always concerned that this could delay. This is where I'm hesitant on either solution here. Having this formality of requiring the 2 months, it can delay things. But what you were trying to prevent, I think it requires the 2 months. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm just very.
Why don't we take this one item and discuss it with council? If we could move this to the work session, I think it would be good to get some more thinking around it. The reason it's there is to safeguard us forcing through a decision quickly that we might want to discuss. But then, the
Can I offer?
trade-off is that it could delay something that's important to get through.
I'm going to offer a solution, I think, that if it jumps from new business directly to the work session, work session is always discussion. So I feel like there should be just some way of, redlining this is super important and pay extra attention.
And I'm in agreement. I do agree with that. There should be certain things that should be streamlined. And I think that probably should go through maybe the borough manager, have the borough manager make that call. If he deems it necessary to be streamlined. And But for all other items not deemed necessary, that they go through that discussion process.
So we would introduce something 1 month and discuss it, vote on it the next, if it's not administrative, if it's not deemed necessary.
Correct.
So the way that this is written is the way that we would put it in our rules and procedures. It might not be worded exactly the right way.
This doesn't call out the urgent items, does it? No, items not administrative. This, yeah,
Item 5 would have to be, you would have to update that information.
so the low income housing situation, there was this sense of urgency that if we didn't agree to something, they were going to take everything away and there was no option. We knocked it down eventually and ignored their urgency, but there was this sense of urgency that it needed to be addressed immediately. And that, I think, is why it got pushed through so quickly. So we just need to be, when we are moving something through quickly because of urgency, not because of routine. If it's routine, fine. Like if we're talking about a handicap sign, who cares? I mean, it matters, but it's not like life or death situation. If there is a sense of urgency, and that is the reason we are pushing it through, we just need to have a way of communicating to council that this needs extra special attention.
Well, maybe if we look at it as, because that issue in particular was urgency regarding most of a financial situation. So I think that it should be urgent to financial matters.
What if it's a sinkhole? Like there's
That's financial. You gotta pay for it.
everything's financial. There are public safety urgencies. There are public worker, like urgency can apply to all sorts of things.
Fine, we'll bring it to the council, full council.
Okay. Yeah, I think with this is going to require a little bit more discussion before we set this in stone. The next piece was regarding the strikeouts for the it was at the bottom, it's filling vacancies. And the note up above says that this is already included and redundant with the language that's in the home rule charter and the borough code. I'm fine with removing it here. Okay. I think it's just that one item that we want to talk about then. Good. Okay. Any questions from the public regarding how? Mayor? Yes. Yes. So the note is,
So there is something in here, I apologize. There is something that maybe you might want to preserve, and that's the interview process for boards and commissions. That's not addressed in the admin code in HRC, but to fill the position of mayor or borough council, that's spelled out. I maybe did this too hastily when I read through vacancies according on boards and commissions and not gotten down to C 3 through 5 there, if you can scroll down. So these are rules about incumbents on boards and commissions be afforded notice and opportunity to express interest in being reappointed. That's not stated in your HRC and admin code. So I shouldn't have struck that, but
yeah, because our council vice president said she didn't see this language in there. And I think she probably was referring to the piece you just mentioned. Okay. So we'll still discuss this, but we'll give it another pass. Talk about it again in January. What was your question? So the impetus is a lot of this language is already in the home rule charter and in the administrative code, and we're trying to simplify this document. And one of the reasons why we wanted to simplify this document was for new council members coming on board so that it was easier to understand. Noted. Okay, we got work to do. All right, we'll revisit that, and thank you for your comments, Mayor. Anything else? Okay, moving on to new business. Discuss committee checks and balances regarding RCO bids and expense approvals. This is an item that came up in the work session regarding the approval of bids for public works. Something that was close or at the threshold for the responsible contractor ordinance. We wanted to discuss to ensure that we had the right procedures in place that regarding approval of businesses and expenses, and whether or not we needed to put something else in place regarding finance approval of bids. And so I'm just going to open it up there. Mr. McGinnis, I think you brought this up.
Yes, I did. And I think that the explanation that Ms. Leonte gave was a good one, where there were items that were already approved, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, in the overall budget versus items that would come up with that. So would come up later, I should say. For example, the sulfur and whatnot, which we have to expend and everything. So, I mean, I'm comfortable with the bid process and the approval process. You know, how they're listed underneath Public Works. But maybe we just review everything just to make sure everything is, I would say, so it's, I guess, conform moving forward. That would just be my 2 cents.
Are you suggesting that everything from Public Works comes to Finance Committee, or are you suggesting only things that are exceeding or only things that are new? I'm just looking for clarification.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way in which Barb explained it the other day, I don't know if it is really necessary, if this item agenda is really necessary. Mr. Flynn's here, the Public Works Committee.
Mr. Chairman, permission to speak. Bernie Flynn, Chair of Public Works. What happens during the bidding process in Public Works is that the first step that Public Works does is to check to see if the contractor is approved by CoStars in the state of Pennsylvania. CoStars is our buying consortium for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that helps eliminate a lot of the overpricing of projects, equipment, and services. So then what happens is when we do local things in town all the time, like for example, we're going to do tree trimming. The first step they do is they look to see if their CoStars approved to make sure that they meet that threshold. And then they bid it out competitively to see if they meet the requirements. Once Public Works goes through all that exercise, then they bring it to the Public Works Committee, and Public Works Committee puts another set of eyes on those individual contracts that we are actually awarding for the given year coming up. Mr. McGinnis, the last meeting, because some of the contracts are very close to the threshold of RCO, and we're very sensitive about responsible contractor ordinance. Some of them felt slightly under, and I questioned how close they were myself. You know, they were like dollars close by, but they still were legitimate. They were still vetted by the Public Works, and that the Public Works people, the director and the assistant director, and then it was vetted again the second time by Public Works itself committee. But Mr. McGinnis felt that it was necessary, any of those expenditures to go again redundantly to the Finance Committee to be approved because of its financial implications. Doing the thing 3 times seems like you're putting on suspenders and belts. But if Borough Council feels that what we need to do to make sure, you know, that's what we have to do. It doesn't slow the process down. It just, what it does is just makes the workload double for the Finance Committee that doesn't need to be done.
And these are all budgeted expenses.
All budgeted expenses, yeah.
Okay. I don't think it hurts to have a line of questioning and do our diligence. I don't know that we need to put any,
I'm in
I don't
agreement
think we
with-
need to put any additional procedures.
No, I'm in agreement with Mr. Flynn, and that's actually what I meant to say. I just didn't know how the hell to say it for some reason. But yeah, I don't think it needs to go through another line of threshold. It would just be go through the committee, ask the tough questions, and
Yeah, RCO is
Go from there.
is very, very close to all of our hearts because we're going to make sure we get qualified, trained, apprenticed contractors that are going to work in the borough and give us top-notch situations. For example, the roof. I mean, that's a prime example that when we went through renovations, we didn't do the roof to keep it within budget. And then we went through the RCO project and we had, I would say, 0 to none problems with the contractors. If there was a problem, the shop steward and the union made sure it was handled immediately outside of our preview. But the RCO is our guarantee that at least we're getting people that are trained in their trade, not mom and pop type of people submitting a low bid. So, especially for important projects.
right, anything $250,000 or
Above.
more.
Yeah, thank you.
Mayor? Correct. Right. My understanding, again, when you had these contracts come through, I had initially felt that they should have been, because it is a financial obligation for the borough and taxpayers. But I understand Mr. Flynn's point, and so I can see to that point that the committee, and plus it's already in the budget. Totally agree.
Okay, so we said we would discuss this item from the work session we kicked to committee. I think we've kicked it around enough.
We're good.
I think we're good and we can move on to the next agenda item. Any comments from the audience before we do, or any additional comments from, okay, seeing none. Discuss property and casualty workers' comp insurance quotes. We kind of got a preview of this. We've seen a couple renditions come through email. I don't know if there's something to present. I've gone through the the latest and the greatest, I think it would be good to go through the document, at least the page that has the comparison of the quotes and what's changed since the last time we discussed this.
Good evening. My name is Isaac Thomas. I am risk manager and insurance agent from Assured Partners. The most recent presentation to you was the 12.5 revision of our proposal. And in that, you will find reduced pricing or estimated pricing from all carriers. Essentially, our efforts of obtaining the most competitive quotes possible and making them as comparable as possible, which involves some arm wringing, frankly, of underwriting. The most recent revision has the Trident renewal for property and casualty alone, no workers' compensation, at $466,834. That's your incumbent. The Challenger Travelers Insurance at $432,251, with the largest differences being the deductibles within property and casualty.
And that is why the premiums are lower for travelers. Is that correct?
That is part of the reason why, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we have $10,000 property deductibles versus $5,000 property deductibles currently and in the renewal offered by Trident. Also, within the auto fleet, 10, originally it was all, now it's 10 of the 120, basically the heaviest vehicles, those that would cause the most damage and liability. Travelers will not reduce their deductible of $10,000 for physical damage where physical damage visited upon that vehicle that we're fixing. There is no liability deductible for the auto. $10,000 auto deductible for 10 of those vehicles, those 10 heaviest vehicles. Again, Trident, $5,000 current, $5,000 in their renewal proposal. So those are the largest differentiators there. For your consideration, I have sent Barb as well as administration a loss summary. I don't know whether you guys have had a chance to review that.
I've reviewed it, and I believe Council President had requested it, and I'm sure, yeah, he's reviewed it as well.
So within there, you'll see that on average, over the past 5 years, the borough has averaged about 1.2 property claims per year. Almost all were well above $10,000. The borough also has averaged about 11.2 auto claims per year. Of those, 2.3 were with a heavy, right? An extra heavy vehicle, which in the Travelers program would have a $5,000 higher deductible. So we do some quick math. Let's go ahead and say on average, we have 5 claims for which the borough will be laying out a $5,000 deductible. It's $25,000. So that's average. That's the differential. If we have a year like 2023, where there were 17 auto claims, how many of those will be with the heavies? If we have a year like 2021, where we had 4 property claims, how many of those will rise above 10,000? Most for a property claim. So my point is that in comparing pricing and realizing that deductible is nothing more than deferred premium, it isn't as drastic a delta as you see on paper. As I've mentioned before to council, both of these carriers are very strong inside this space, very strong. I would not present a carrier that we did not stand behind 100%. So there is some nuance in that consideration, and I wanted to make sure that I visited again today to discuss that with you further if necessary.
Would there be any benefits to staying with the current carrier versus switching to save a couple 10,000 in premium, which you said could end up being deferred in or made up in higher deductibles?
Mostly administrative. The benefits would be mostly administrative for your staff, for Don, auto ID cards, things that mostly paperwork, but they aren't negligible. It's time of your administrative staff.
I mean, I'm of the opinion that we stay with the current carrier.
There is also the opportunity to take advantage of Travelers Property and Casualty, so on the final page above the first bolded line, and remain with AmTrust for workers' compensation. Again, we still have the property and casualty deductible issue if we were to move to Travelers there. So that doesn't really eliminate it. It just makes the delta a little bit smaller.
It's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah,
Can't predict an accident.
that's why I'm
in the
here.
future.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
do you guys have any strong opinions?
I'm fine with staying as with the current provider.
How long have we been with this, with,
2 years. We were Travelers previous to that for quite a while, about 8 years prior.
So another bit of information for the committee to consider too is when we build our budget every year, we build it before we get quotes of general liability, property and casualty, and workers' comp, because there's no way to do it otherwise. And we look at industry norms, industry standards, and we make a presumption that says that we think it's going to do this. And the presumption that went into the budget was a plus 7% increase in year over year for this type of insurance. And both of these quotes are in the negative. Let's call Trident kind of the Trident quote kind of equal for all intents and purposes, and the Travelers quote is down 4%. So either one you choose, you are down, you are beating budget on this number. But you do, if you were to take the Travelers one, and I'm kind of leaning, I think these, if you're asking my opinion, I'm offering my opinion. You didn't ask me, I'm offering my opinion. They're very similar here, and we can stay with our present company that we work with and reduce that administrative overhead burden. And we also are, it's a safer play because we don't have the bad year scenario that could kick us in the shins if we had 7 or 8 large vehicle accidents that, as we're learning with the fire truck, that's not just 10,000, that's actually going to be over $100,000 claim on that one.
I think that the administrative burden of changing is something that I don't think is remotely worthwhile for the few dollars that we're talking about. I want you guys doing a lot of things, and changing insurance cards is not important to me when we're not talking about that much.
I think I would agree with that and at least recommend to council that we would retain the current Trident carrier.
I'm in agreement.
All right, 3-0.
Thank you for your time. Any other
Thank you.
questions? Anything unclear? Thanks, guys.
Okay, 5C, discuss 2025 meeting schedule, which we have a copy of, taken a look. I didn't have any strong opinions. I know that there could be some logical reasons why we would switch the order, or potentially pair certain committee meetings on the same evening. You have any suggestions?
I know to a certain extent why they are in the order that they are. And I know that I'm part of the reason they're there. And Nicole is the other part of the reason they're there. Which I don't think that our personal schedules are the main concern, but they are a concern that Nicole works in New York on Tuesdays. I'm going to try to say this out loud. Patrick knows this, so like stop me if I'm saying something wrong. So I'm doing all the meetings on Tuesday, and Nicole's doing all the meetings on Wednesday. And that is how these got separated into those 2 days. I agree that if parking and smart growth were on the same day, it would make much more sense. But that is why they are where they are.
I mean, I look at it from a flow of the meeting perspective, having ACT followed by Public Works and Finance. I believe they kind of intertwine on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, whenever they want them. And then the other meeting day would be Public Safety, followed by Parking and Smart Growth. Smart Growth tends to last the longest, and it has been all year. And I feel that that should be the last meeting on that particular day.
I think the order makes sense. To have parking and smart growth on the same day. I don't have a preference for which day that actually occurs. So if there's schedule conflicts and we need to change Tuesday meetings to Wednesday meetings, that would be fine. But I tend to agree that those,
So if Nicole is only on Tuesdays at 6:30, that might be possible, but I have not talked to her about that.
we can make a recommendation, and we can discuss. I think we could have smart growth and parking on Wednesday, and we could have finance and public works on Tuesday. And I think the order makes sense that Mr. McGinnis is proposing.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you could even put ACT with Parking and Smart Growth and Public Safety on Tuesday with Public Works and Finance. However they work.
I think this is mostly somebody needs to talk to Nicole about if she can make a meeting on Tuesday and if the latest meeting is going to work with her schedule. I think that's really, I can adjust. I'm exhausted. I usually do the bid at 8 in the morning and then stay here on Tuesdays until whenever we're done. So I'm very tired on Tuesdays. But
We're
this
all
is dependent-
rearranging our schedule for these meetings.
Yeah, this is dependent upon Nicole's availability, I believe. And so I just think somebody needs to reach out to her.
Okay.
I think we go in with a recommendation and we discuss it. What about the remaining meetings here? We just talked about council committee meetings.
I think they're fine.
I wouldn't have any changes.
I would not. Yeah.
I don't think there's any dependencies here that, if we change something in committee meetings would impact. Yeah, even so, until those are like fully ramped up, I don't know that there's any dependency there right now either. So, but that's a good suggestion. We have a lot of committees. Okay. Any additional comments, questions? Anything from the general public in attendance? Okay. Any other business? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned at 6:19.